All right, we got our invitation saying we're going to live stream. Perfect. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. We are so glad that you could join us for today's event. Welcome to the Together We Will Heal Forum, organized by the Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. The conference's vision is to educate the African American community on mental health, substance use disorder, and intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as the total well-being of African Americans. We hope this forum will provide the opportunity for you to participate in conversations that offer education, encouragement, and resources. Few housekeeping rules before we get started. First, please mute yourself at all times. There will be time for interactions. You may raise your hand and then unmute yourself to talk when you're called. If you get emotionally or overwhelmed, please turn off video so that you may handle your emotions privately. And note that this session will be recorded and it is being streamed live on Facebook. So please smile. Today's conversation is on the role of peer support services in mental health care. Now, my name, Elliott Niblack. I am a mental health peer specialist for the Austin Area Mental Health Connections, also the Chief of Education and Equity for the D. Wood Foundation, the minority mental health nonprofit. And I'm here today with Jack Brown, CEO and founder of Peer-to-Peer Whole Wellness. Jack is an Army veteran with 7 years of peer support specialist experience. Jack currently leads a peer-run organization, Peer-to-Peer Whole Wellness. Jack is also a certified MHPS and RSPS and a newly certified RPS, as well as a RAP, Wellness Recovery and Action Plan Facilitator. And so for today, we are gonna have a conversation about peer support services. And because this is a conversation, I am very much looking forward to any audio feedback, any audience feedback for Jack, myself, just to keep this whole thing as organic as possible. So we're just gonna start off this conversation with a simple question, and Jack, we'll just take it from there. So Jack, introduce yourself. How did you come to be a peer support specialist, your lived experience, anything that you wanna share with us about your story?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Brown. I am the CEO and founder of Peer-to-Peer Whole Wellness. So short version, how I came into peer support is being an Army veteran. I went through some things in life and decided to change my life and start a journey of recovery. And while I was in treatment, there was this individual that would come in. And I just assumed that he was a counselor, right? And he would come in and he would teach us for an hour every day. And so one day he finally told us what his title was and how it came to be. And I could always relate to this gentleman because he just didn't seem like a regular therapist or a counselor or anything. And he came from a different perspective, I guess we could say, for lack of a better word. And once he told me that he was a peer support and the VA created his job because of his lived experience or because of some of his past experience that typically the rest of the world frowns upon, they became assets. And I knew right then at that very moment, I wanted to be a peer, right? I didn't know I was going to end up in the field, but I did know I wanted to be a peer support. So for me, my lived experience is kind of all inclusive. The RSPS stands for reentry. So that means I've been on vacation courtesy of the state a few times. The MHPS is mental health peer support specialist, and the RSPS is the recovery support peer specialist. I can barely remember the acronyms.
There's so many of them. It's like an alphabet every single time I go to a training.
Right.
Yeah. So Jack, thank you so much for just sharing that little piece of your story. As you and I both have talked about, right? Our stories are so important. And, of course, I believe that we can take that to any platform. Everybody's an important person. Like everybody has a story, and it's our stories that make so much of what we do so powerful, And thank you for sharing yours. Just a little bit on mine. So I didn't find out about the official peer support process, anything like that, until I moved to Austin from Philly. And I already had a lifetime of mental health difficulties. I have a dual diagnosis of bipolar type 2 and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I had a whole swath of not so much fun life experiences as a kid growing up. And the biggest one that made me feel like if I just had a peer support person in my life back then, maybe it wouldn't have been so rough. But one day I woke up, I was 12 years old, and I had an episode of dissociative amnesia. Forgot everything. Didn't know my name, didn't know where I was at, didn't know who my parents were. I knew how to walk and talk. Outside of that, though, I spent the summer relearning people and society, listening to music, just so I could make sure I had something relevant to say, you know? And that obviously influenced my entire life up to this point. And so that's like, I guess you could say the 30, 45-second elevator pitch, because for me, peer support started from childhood trauma. And then all the life complications that came in that got me to this point now where I'm also rocking it with mental health peer specialist, recovery support peer specialist. Reentry, that's something that even though I don't know anything personally about, I've been able and fortunate to work with individuals within that space as well. And so, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what has your experience been, I'd say, in peer support space now during such a, incredibly difficult time?
Oh man, it's harder, right? And the reason I say that is COVID exposed the mental health challenges to the world, right? And being alone, I had time to like really take a deep dive in self. And so as I was taking a deep dive in self, a lot of my colleagues and coworkers, they were going through a lot of different trying times. And what we came up with together was that, how do I say it? Now the whole world is aware of mental health challenges, and now they're taking a look at themselves. And so for us as givers, doers, and seekers and helpers, the caseloads tripled, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? So let's just say on a regular day or with a regular organization, you might have a caseload of 35 to 45 people, right? Well, for me, everybody I knew, knowing that I'm in this field, all of a sudden needed my help. And so it went from like 35, 45 people to like 155 people, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense, and it's kind of unfortunate that it does make sense, because our services are so necessary. And like you just said, right, this time right now is bringing to the forefront all of these pre-existing mental health challenges. And in a similar sense, I used to be a teacher, right? And so in a similar sense as that has exploded right now during these times within COVID, right, in the teaching profession, this mass exodus of teachers, or this influx of teachers reporting out late or sick for mental health reasons, so on and so forth. I mean, it's the same I've seen in the peer support space. We have more of a need, and I'm very happy that we have, right, the profession, which I would love for us to speak a bit more about, just so people get some more details. It's just that just within any kind of social work field, when things get difficult in society, the healers within that society, we want to step up, and we do step up, but then it also shows that, we need more healers. We need more people with lived experience. That's something that I needed in my life, someone who understood what my mental health challenges were. And then not only that, could show me, hey, I had success with making it through this mental health challenge. I actually built an entire positive, wonderful life that I'm always thankful for because I had a peer support specialist. I feel like there's so many of us out there who could be certified within this space, but we already are. We're just not out there on the front lines in a sense.
It's funny you say that. So this is my first thought about that. what attracted me to peer support was it was so pure and it was so organic. It was so authentic. It wasn't clinical, right? You know, it was just one person helping another person. And everything the world had told me was a defect had all of a sudden became an asset, right? And so the individual that's in front of me or next to me, because it's not about you sitting in front of me, the individual that I'm sitting alongside with can relate and feel at ease. You know, my own personal experience, you know, I've been going to see therapists since I was like 9. I've been acting out as a kid for years, but growing up as a person of color and talking about mental health, that was frowned upon and it was never talked about, right? We don't talk about mental health, you know, because like crazy, forgive me for lack of a better word, was just, that's how they described, my parents described mental health. And so now peer support is, it's the hot topic, right? Because it's evidence-based that this actually does work. The connection is different. I can remember sitting in my therapist's office and looking at all the degrees around on the wall and thinking to myself that this person really doesn't care about me. But then when a person comes up with a t-shirt and some blue jeans and some Chuck Taylors come on and tell me they've been where I've been, and I can feel that energy and relate to that energy, that makes me want to educate myself more to my own possible mental health challenges. So COVID exposed it, but it gave the world an education in mental health challenges, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like right now, empathy, I mean, not just feel, you can just look online, do a quick search for the word empathy, and 20 billion websites are going to pop up with some kind of, you know, inspirational piece or resource for healing or so on and so forth. And there's absolutely everything right with that. It's just at the same time, we've stepped from that pure space into now this medical model. And before I continue with all these terms and such, just to make sure that I am representing myself clearly when it comes to the peer support space, right? It's that my role as a peer support specialist is to be at any given moment, right? A cheerleader. It's to be a shoulder to cry on, an ear to listen. It is someone that can be called at any point of the night because there's a critical condition that, you know, one of my peers, and notice how I say the word peer, and that's not obviously not for you, just for those who are listening. We use the word peer or my fellow human, not client, you know, not patient. No, we're all just people. And just going back to what you said, right, about the professionalism and the degrees on the wall and that medical model, I feel very similar to you in how peer support, when we started, there was no official title for it. It was just what we do. It's just what any community does, right? And then now that it's become this more professional thing where now there are offices and there's certain amounts of accountability, which there should be, that's also kind of distracting from that, like you said, organic nature of what peer support has been and is. Because the second I start trying to flout letters, oh, look at all this, MHPS, RPS, FBI, and all those good letters, that has the potential effect to push my brothers and sisters of humans away from embracing that conversation that we're having right now. So I always feel like there's this line, and I'm not worried about walking this line. It's just very interesting to see this line of professional and then peer support. And it's like, why can't those two line up minus the traditional trappings, right, of what the medical model is, the white coat, the med, so on and so forth.
So this is why I say peer support has allowed me to mature in my recovery in ways I really can't describe. And what I mean by that is like advocacy, right? On a macro level, like, you know, taking on the system. That's never been my thing. That's more political, right? You know, and I'm a boots on the ground kind of guy. But when it comes to peer support, I get a little feisty, right? And I, you know, it was almost like an oath, you know, I took to become a peer. And so it's really left up to me, the individual, to hold peer support at its purest role. And if that means bumping head with various people in various organizations to make sure that role stays pure, then I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to speak up about that and defend that, because if peer support ever truly went all clinical, I feel I have no numbers to support this, but I think it would fall off because it would just blend into other social services. And I may be wrong, but it's the energy that goes in, it's the energy I produce in front of the peer that attracts them to peer services, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. It's our personalities, right? We are who we are. And I'll never forget my first peer mentee when they told me that one of the reasons why they felt they were having so much success and growth personally, professionally, is because they felt like they could be themselves, as opposed to when they were seeing their doctor or their counselor and feeling like, I won't say just a name on a page, just more so here's like a list of symptoms and here's a list of potential cures. Whereas my professional self, I've loved that maturing within the peer support space, and that I have fully integrated it, I feel, in my personal space, and recognizing that I have to be myself. If we're not ourselves, then we're hiding from something. And I mean, that's, I think, just endemic of the community in general, like just America, worldwide, whatever. We're so used to hiding who we are because we assume someone's going to think a certain way about us, or we don't want to come across a certain way because of X, Y, and Z. When really, for me, peer support got me out of my own bubble, because like teaching, peer support, all these healing professions, social workers, we don't do this for the money. That's not the reason why we get into it, right? And so that, similar to what you said, I was in my classroom, I advocated a little bit, whatever, I don't want to raise too much noise, just want to make sure my kids got what they got. And now peer support space, you want to see me get heated, try telling one of my mentees, or just try telling me that the person with the most lived experience in a room full of doctors should not be the voice most listened to, right? Like, we are our peers, we individuals are the most important. We deserve someone that we can connect with. And that's why I love this profession so much.
So Elliott, I got a question for you. So what is peer support to you and what is it not?
So let's see. I am going to try my best to answer that using the word and over not or but, because just as a lived personal experience, I find that if I talk about what something is, it's more constructive. So I would say peer support is being human's biggest fan. I would say it's having either the loudest voice in the room when it comes to advocating for my medical needs and my life needs, / me helping my peer, my mentee, advocate for themselves. I believe that it's all about guidance and assisting others in taking care of themselves. It's consistency. It is most definitely healing oriented. And in some ways, I'll say it is solution driven. And yet it's also about natural growth. I can have a plan for something to achieve, and then I can also remember, oh, I'm a human. I'm doing all this introspection. And now that I'm in a safe space, you can't plan for that. That is something that is unplanned for. Boom. How about yourself, man? What do you think?
So for me, peer support is an organic relationship between two individuals with lived experience, one having just a little more experience in as far as recovery goes, that aids as a guide for the other individual. We walk side by side. It's not me leading you or you leading me. We're I'm able to hold space. If I don't have to have all the answers, I don't have to have the degrees to be a servant or be of service, right? Because sometimes it's just about holding space. Yeah, that's peer support in a nutshell. Just being able to be vulnerable, transparent at any given moment, and being like someone's biggest fan at any given moment, being their cheerleader, like you said, right? Because the journey of recovery is hard, and if it were not for peer supports and other individuals in my support system, I probably wouldn't be here. Um, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So what is it not to you though? My list is kind of short and brief. Peer
Uh,
support, because I've been able to work for a few organizations, and like I said earlier, peer support became the new hot topic, and every organization wanted one, but for billing purposes only. And so they didn't know what to do with us. And so some days it looked like I was an Uber, and then some days it looked
mm,
like I was a social worker or a case manager. And every day was different, right? And it was totally outside of what the role of peer support really, the way I was taught that it
mm,
was supposed to be about. And so that's where I say the advocacy piece kicked in, where I had to educate my higher ups, my managers, my supervisors, my everybody, like, no, this is what peer support is about, right? And this is how you guys are going to best utilize what I bring to the table. And on most days, it was just me being a translator between clinician and peer.
so I want to latch on to that because when you talked about going into different organizations, right, and what their expectations for and what your roles were in those spaces, I've seen that as well as seen on the other end, similar to your organization and within the one I'm with right now, Austin Area Mental Health Connections, consumer operated service provider. So within our organization, we're run by individuals who all have lived experience, all have experience with mental illness or with homelessness or with reentry or with substance misuse recovery, so on and so forth. And it's an interesting environment working in there and seeing how natural everything runs. It feels in those spaces like I am being always looked at as a whole person. And those few instances where I might feel disrespected or slighted or something along those lines, there's always an open line of communication because I feel like that is something that we have to do, is then that we have to practice what we preach, right? Like I have improved so much on my communication skills simply by working in a space where I'm surrounded by individuals who are all working on their communication skills very readily, very just pronounced. There is no fear. There is a abundance of courage because we all recognize that we've been through some stuff. And on that medical model and straddling that line between, okay, because we are partners, we're all partners. There is the leader, which is the actual peer, him or herself. They're the ones leading the recovery. If they feel like they could use swimming as a therapeutic thing, boom, we want to help them try to figure out that and how to get it for themselves. And at the same time, being that other voice in the room or other ear in the room when working with clinicians, like you said, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, like being part of that team, that sense of we feel like, how to put this, I have definitely been in situations where doctors have made me feel like I am reporting to them, when in reality, I report to my peer. And it feels great being able to say that and stand up for somebody and watching them stand up for themselves, having seen that example. And you know what? This makes me think back to something else you said. So, what is, let's see how I put this. What is something that stands out in your memory in regard to, in as respectful a way to this person's experiences as you can be, any instances where you just said, wow, I am so proud to know my peer because I've had this experience. I've seen so much life in this peer. I've seen this peer grow so much and accomplish so much. I've seen one of my peers go from exiting a recovery center into becoming a manager in a retail store. Like I have these moments like that to just make my heart swell up. Want to know if you had any thoughts about that?
I mean, to be honest, I'll put it on me. You don't get a lot of those experiences, right? And when you get them, they're heartfelt and they're long lasting. That's what keeps me doing what I do. This one particular time I was at a treatment facility getting an individual in treatment, and we were waiting the paperwork, and I looked across the way and seen a young lady, and this young lady just had this look on her face like, one, I don't want to be here, two, I ain't got nowhere to go, and three, I don't feel any hope at this very moment, right? And so I don't know, something just led me to go have a conversation with her, right? And I went, introduced myself, I told her what I do, I told her what peer support was, and she was waiting for her paperwork to go into treatment that day as well. And she told me several days later, like, if I wouldn't have talked to her, she wouldn't have went that day, right? She was thinking about leaving. She was actually finna go when I stopped her. And she's still clean today. She's gotten her kids back. She has a job, you know what I mean? And so just being able to be there and be a part of the process, it's like, okay, I'm gonna get 300 no's here in a minute, but I still got that one fond memory to hold on to get me to the next fond memory, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a healing profession, meaning we are necessarily surrounded by pain. We walk into these spaces that are filled with people in pain. And it is a very scary experience, even just thinking about going to that pain space with a whole bunch of other pain around you. And so, yeah, bro, like just that one extra voice of advocacy, or someone who just says, hey, I care, I'm here for you when you go in, I'm here for you when you get out, so on. It's life-changing. So life-changing.
Oh yeah, she wasn't even on my caseload, but I made it a point to like go in, check on her from time to time. If I was there to see my individual, my participant, then I would make sure I check on her. And it just, to have someone that believes in you, that doesn't know you, that power dynamic is amazing. Having people believe in me today made me feel loved and appreciated. It gave me hope to keep pushing forward. You know what I mean? And so that's why I do what I do, even when I'm tired.
Yes. Look, okay. look, this job, like really, right? This job actually helps me get through the job, right? Like like you said, like the 300, and this is something that I had to learn having broken myself within the education system, in that I wanted to have so much control over how well my students would do, and not just in grades, but they're going to go out there, they're going to read and write and graduate and do everything and be super happy and all that. And that was not the case. It was not within my power to ensure all of that. And it created a kind of savior complex that I believe all teachers have at some point, especially in the beginning. And having burnt myself out from that has helped me so much in this profession, because peer support, when you ask me what peer support is not, all right, peer support is not a pill. It is not a quick fix. It is not a wish. That it's a guaranteed experience. And outside of that, success or lack of success is up to the individual to determine. And so as a mentor, like I have to take a step back and say, this is not about me. This is about my peer. This is about them as a human. And if this human decides that they want to stick with the path that they and myself had talked about and that they've seen work, wonderful. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. Sometimes the peer doesn't come back for whatever reason. Sometimes the peer starts veering around and I want to say, oh, you sure you want to do that? And then I don't, because I remember lack of judgment. And so peer support, when I do see those experiences of from down here to up here, just mentally and physically sometimes. That one time out of 300, are you kidding me? I now have the capacity to appreciate that even more. And like you said, just get that energy to keep it moving. Because I feel like now, if someone as a peer makes the decision to step back, well, hey, that door is always open. Another one's going to come in and we're just going to keep working together. Like, it's a very empowering line of work, I feel.
I agree. A lot of the individuals that I've worked with over the years, I always get it understood. If you fall by the wayside along your journey, because I fell by the wayside along my journey, there's no judge. It's a no judgment zone, and that's what I love about peer support. I can be as vulnerable and as transparent as I need to be, or when I need to, right? And it's the no judgment zone, and that actually strengthens our connection even more, because of the transparency or the vulnerability. So
thinking on this line, I want more peer support specialists, right? And so what would you say as an advertisement for becoming or getting involved in the peer support space as to be a peer for oneself?
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, because I was just having a conversation kind of around this just yesterday. One second. Sorry about that. We need more RCOs. We need more recovery community organizations that are peer ran, because we know our people, and we know how to help our people, and it takes a what. Let not say that out loud. I was
There's
gonna
that
go
professional
in,
part.
but I'm not gonna do that. But so a lot of my colleagues or peers, they kind of applaud what I do now, because I took that chance to start my own RCO, right? Because I just didn't like the way a lot of nonprofits were utilizing peer support as their services. That it was a form of misuse. And so who better to provide this service than a crew of peers?
Yeah.
Right. So we already know what it's not. I seen in the chat, and I don't know if it's too early to answer the question, but part of the question is, well, the individual, Ms. Miller, said that for me, mental health peer support was unique because I knew there were not writing down everything I said. It was someone else like me that understood and believed. Oh, it moved on and believed in me to heal. It gave me the freedom to find the truth about who I am. How will this change now that MHPS is now a billable Medicaid service? Okay, I'm just going to be honest. I am not a big clinical fan at all. And so I can speak the clinical language, but I also hold true to the 46-hour class that I took about keeping the role of peer support as pure as possible. So I'm not like writing down everything like a clinician and or a therapist and everything. I'm not reporting everything. So because trust is everything to me in this field. And if I have your trust and we've built a rapport, I would only be going backwards if I violated that and just because of Medicaid billing. So I had to invest in a clinician thesaurus. so I could speak more clinical about my encounter without like disclosing like heartfelt, transparent, vulnerable moments that I received from the peer.
Yes. I want to echo that in so much as there is towards that, like I said, clinical model. I am very resistant to any kind of change that I see as unethical immoral, straight up harmful, especially to the community that it is being, rolled out to. And while I did hop into the peer support space after the Medicaid billable piece had started to be integrated into it, it has been interesting seeing how little it has changed. Because on the Medicaid billable end, those have an additional set of requirements, obviously, for the government in order to show that our services are viable, that they're being done safely. Accountability, I said it before, right? Accountability is important. It just is. I have to be accountable for my actions. And with that said, we typically hear the word accountable as this horrible negative thing. Ooh, he didn't pick up after his dog. Like, he is being held accountable when he stepped in that stuff. Like, that's sure, right? A bad thing. And then accountable also, I feel, means taking ownership of the good things, of the positive and growth-oriented things. So when it comes to that Medicaid billable piece and that accountability word, my ability to stay accountable to the good works that are done is and always has been more important than the level of like that ground level accountability of just purely have a person, they're here. If you want any details, talk to them, because that trust between us is unbreakable. And I do love how that is a piece of this, that it doesn't have to come from the clinical model, doctor-patient confidentiality. It's just already inherent in what we do. So just to get back to that question, Medicaid billable, simply for me, and it sounds like, Jack, similar for you, the trust is still the most important part, and that never went away just because something else got added on. Yeah. Are there any other questions that you saw in the chat?
No, that was just one of the questions. There's a couple of comments. I really appreciate this conversation that aligns with how I want to move forward in my career. I'm graduating senior, looking to volunteer or intern if that is a possibility this summer. I just recently applied for graduate school for mental health counseling. I would love to be a part of the work you all are doing. And Ms. Brain said, agree, Jack, for me, it's about upholding the integrity of our role as peer specialists.
Well, just to definitely give a response to the individual about looking for volunteer opportunities. If this is a person in Austin, Texas, there are a number of ways, and we definitely have some resources. I know if you want to go to, let's see, my organization's website, and we'll put all this information in the chat later. There is the availability of getting training, as well as a program for getting peer support hours that are required for certification. And then at the same time, outside of that official Medicaid billable space, there are still opportunities to volunteer within the peer support world. For example, down in our organization, Area MHC, we can have volunteers come in from the community to teach classes. We have the ability for volunteers, once they're in that space, if they see peer support as a thing that they want as a part of their lives and as a part of their profession, they can join in on us there, get potential hours, potential stipend, because that is one of the other roadblocks to peer support certification, funding for it. And so, yeah, there are always opportunities like that. One of the other organizations I'm with, like I said, the D. Wood Foundation, we have our You Are Not Alone program, YNA, and that is for college students. We're right now posted in the Houston Tillotson schools. We are all about just needing volunteers to come into these college spaces, especially with Black and Brown youth and young adults, to encourage around this peer support. So yeah, I'll definitely include information about that when we get to the end. And I really love seeing it in the chat if people just want to keep looking in there. So many resources and supports. And so until our next question comes about.
Oh, it's already there, bro. It's like, what do you do with your peers? What do you do with your peers? What a typical day is like? So for me, it just depends on where the individual is, right? I've worked in all the different components One of the common denominators are critical documents and obtaining those and finding resources to obtain those. And then some days it's just about being in the community, right? And what I mean by that is like, I have this one individual, she likes sitting by the lake and feeding the ducks. It calms her down. And so once a week, we go to the lake with a loaf of bread and we feed the ducks, right? You know, it's about helping someone find their peaceful place, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is like, for me, fishing, riding horses, riding bikes, exercising, things of that nature, that brings me peace. That's a form of my self-care, right? And so helping them find their form of self-care could be a part of the day. Possibly some education and advocacy. It just depends on the individual and what their need is for that individual, that particular day. The one thing, so as a teenager, I worked in a warehouse and I hated it because it was the same repetitive thing every day, right? With peer support, not so much, because every individual is different and every day is different. So, you know, today we might be looking for a house or a job, right? Or today we might just be having a conversation where you need me to hold space and just be there for you in a listening ear, right? And then tomorrow we may work on a resume. I don't know. My days vary day to day. And from person to person. So just to say I don't have a routine day is what I'll say.
Yes, and there's definitely no such thing as a routine day / every day is different. Every hour is different, especially depending on where the peer support specialist is operating out of or from. So for me, because my focus is the organization's crisis peer support program, I spend a lot of my days going into like hospital settings, clinical settings, rehabilitation settings, areas like that, after getting a referral from a clinician or a family member or someone who has spoken with an individual who is experiencing what they would classify as a mental health crisis. And quick side to say that a mental health / behavioral health crisis is going to vary by person to person, not to judge anybody's experience. It's that when I get my referrals, they're placed in, there's people who are in these situations, and I walk in, I try to meet with them about a week or two before they exit and just have that peer-to-peer conversation of, all right, right now you are having a hard time, you are in crisis, maybe you've gone back and started using substances again. Maybe you weren't able to get your medication and had a psychotic episode. Now we're in for 24 to 48 hours. So within that frame, I come in and say, we want to make sure that your recovery can be sustained after you leave this center. What is it that you need critically in order to continue down that road of recovery? And traditionally we say, social workers have resources available, so to speak. We can provide vouchers for this, or they can provide some guidance on this. Whereas for me, anything that the person needs when they leave that they feel is critical is what is critical. So housing, helping locating housing, that is very critical, right? Sometimes it's finding clothing. Maybe there's already a space for them to live. Maybe it's moving their things because they got evicted from one apartment during their crisis and now need to move that equipment and like furniture and all that to another apartment. Sometimes it's just, I know for me, if I have a cat and her name is Sweetness because she is the sweetness, and if anything happened to me and I didn't know that Sweetness was being taken care of, there's no way I could even think about waking up in the morning and just taking my meds, let alone keeping my recovery going. So for us, the crisis center, that's where my day comes in, finding out more what people want, what they need. And then after helping them with that, saying, hey, we have an entire organization over here with the computer lab, with job placement services, with support groups online and offline. taking them from that crisis position and helping them into a space where they can just keep that recovery going. And then there are other crisis people and there's other specialists that operate in different areas. You'd have to really talk with, even just two people with the same certification, and you'll get two different answers.
Lady J asked the question, how long do we work with a peer or mentee for?
As long as the peer needs us, in a sense, because the purpose of peer support, I say, is I want to help you help yourself to the point where you never want to see me again or never need to see me again. But I should never have to see you again after we are finished here with your peer support process, because that person is able and 100% confident in approaching their lives from a self-directed standpoint. Some people that might take a couple of months, some people that might take a couple of years. I know that there's sometimes I cycle in my own mental health care, because being a support specialist does not mean that my mental health is 100% on point every single second of the day. Not happening. I am human. Imposter syndrome like no other. And so that time frame, that's like a clinical model piece. We don't do time frames. We don't talk, you have to get this done by this time. It's organic. The peer runs it. The peer decides, for me, the timeline.
For me, I don't, there's no clock on it. The gentleman that inspired me to become a peer, I still talk to him from time to time, not so much on a peer support level. He's just became a vital part of my support system. What I would say is this: sometimes individuals stray off the path of their journey, right? And for me, guilt and shame was a strong motivator to stay disconnected. So you never know when you might get that phone call from that individual that has mustered enough courage to reach out and ask for help again, right? You know, that's the whole thing about me, like making sure we like build a rapport and they know that there's no judgment on the side of me if anything goes astray, you know? So I've gotten certain organizations say, hey, because of this said particular funding, you can only see this individual for XYZ, right? But my heart, the peer in me, I can't, like, you call me and I pick up the phone, hey, I can't talk to you because we ain't got no more funding. I'm just saying, no, I can't help you anymore. The funds ran out last year. So no, I'm gonna go out my way to try to help that individual regardless, off the books, on the books, however, because at the end of the day, I'm still there to be of service. You know, I can't let what other people say dictate what my next move is. You know, I tell people quite often I do the next right thing for the next right reason, just because I like to be able to hold my head up and look at myself in the mirror when I brush my teeth in the morning, right? Because I did the right thing by an individual. So there was another question, Elliott, if I can get back to it. Is there any support system like this in Mr. Poole? Miss Poole, I'm sorry. Is there any support systems like this in Philadelphia? I'm a Texas boy. I've never been to Philly. I have no idea.
I mean, I guess they saw the Flyers shirt kicking off right there. So, you know, that Philly till I die. So I do not know specifically because I've been out of Philly for so long. I do know, however, that the peer support space is nationwide as well as international. I have a brother who lives out in Australia who told me about the peer support movement over there and all the different models they have. So there is peer support, especially if you are in a major city. And without a doubt, I know there's that in Philly, and that even if there isn't, eventually I'm going to get back over there and start building this up over there as well, because peer support just needs to be exploding like it already is. I just also want it to get more of a community, as well as just the recognition that it deserves, because there should be more funding for this, especially when it comes to finding new peer support specialists. So you just Google peer support, whatever your city name is, and there are going to be resources there for you.
You know,
yeah.
I kind of want to say something, but I'm scared. But I'm gonna say it anyway.
There we go. It was the best things.
Clinicians and peers are cousins, right? And the reason I say that is because most clinicians that work in this field can identify to what's going on with other individuals, for lack of a better word, but because of educations and various institutions that clinicians have attended to obtain their credentials, self-disclosure is frowned upon, right? And self-disclosure is the most powerful tool I have in my arsenal when I'm dealing with an individual, right? And I feel like if you are a social worker or LPC or any one of those alphabets, right? I feel because you work in this field, you're really a peer at heart. And so why not take the training and be a peer and for a day, just to see what that feels like. Just be yourself, right? I know what education has taught me, right? Because I'm an LCDCI, but I love peer support. Like a good colleague of mine, Dr. Kelly, keeps telling me, Jack, go get your license. I'm like, no, I just want to be a peer, right? Jack, go get your license. Sorry, because I love being a peer. I can just be Clark Kent and I don't have to be Superman. Once I get those credentials, now I got to be Superman. I got to be protective of my license and all of that at all the daggone time. And I don't know what subject to come out of my mouth. So I'm probably going to get my license and lose it as fast as I get it. So it's easier for me to just stay a peer, stay in my little realm where I do the best work. But try the boots on as a peer. We have multiple certifications. If mental health isn't your thing and substance use is, we have that. If reentry is your thing, we have that, right? We have family partners, people that, family members who have mental health challenges and things of that nature. There's so many different peer like educational tools out there. Because to me, the only way I feel that I can be effective in what I do is if I'm cross-trained in everything that that's around me. And so the God of my understanding has gifted me to be like a big old bottle of Heinz 57 sauce, right? I fit into the homeless community. I'm a veteran, right? I fit the reentry. I fit the mental health. I fit the recovery aspect of it, right? And so, I'm able to reach people on a whole different level anywhere, or like, and you couldn't have told me that like 10 years ago, like, okay, Jack, your story is going to inspire somebody, or you're going to get an invitation from Lady Jane to speak on a panel. And I'm like, okay, I would have laughed at you, right? And that's just my story, right? So just take your clinical hat off and just be you for a second. Allow yourself to heal. That's what I want to say.
Thank you for saying all that. That just makes my heart lighten up too. And I really want to touch on what you said there with the intersectionality of all of this work, because just by proxy, like you just said with self-disclosure, it means we have to be human. And in relating as humans, I believe that everybody can empathize with everybody. Empathy being recognition of someone's feelings, as well as being able to step into those emotional shoes. I can never understand certain kinds of loss. I can't understand. My house has never burned down. I cannot literally think about that. What I can figuratively do, though, is think about how it feels to not have a place to live, to have something suddenly ripped away from me. And so I can know that feeling of watching my life apparently disappear in front of me. And so on that peer support end, it is about having a similar experience. And with that said, every peer supporter, every peer mentor, every peer mentee is a different person. And there's a lack of a guidebook in terms of how we connect for a reason, because those connections are so natural and infinite in their variety. And I see now that we're about 5 minutes in. So I guess this should be the portion where we want to just ask any final questions. Also, just any resources that we would like to share. Jack, are there anything that you would like to put in there for the chat or for people to know?
I'll drop my website for peer-to-peer in there and all the services that we provide. We have various outreach programs and volunteer opportunities if you're ever in the Dallas area. I also put my email address in there. So if you have any questions or concerns or just want to chat, I'm available. Just hit me up. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and yada, yada. No, I'm just playing.
And I'm going to drop in the chat right now my group's website, Austin Area MHC, as well as the D. Wood Foundation for our YNA program. Also, I'm just going to toss in there my email address, as well as just advocating for our crisis peer support program, as well as our general facility use. So on our website, you'll see the different areas that we offer support in. And even though right now we're still kind of doing a hybrid with online and offline, all of our mental health support groups, our job placement, not job placement, as well as our job skills, our one-to-one peer services, peer mentoring, locating resources. You can read more about those on the website. And that even though we are primarily online right now, everything is hybrid, and we will be getting back into the shack once, I'd say in about a month or two, when things have finally consistently calmed down around here. There we go. I'm just going to put that email in there. Jack, do you have any final words, anything you'd like to say?
Oh man, thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to listen to me ramble. Thank you, Lady Jane, for the invite, man. And this is like, it was a pleasure working with you, Elliott.
Same here, brother. We already talked about how this conversation was not just going to be an hour. So y'all can peace out. And he and I are just going to continue this whole thing going on for like at least another 2 hours. Because I just like, this is another thing I love about peer support. It's humans talking to humans at the end of the day. And it's humans being honest with other humans. And I'm not saying it hasn't gotten me into trouble every so often, but being honest, and I get to do that for a day, all day, and then I get to encourage other people to be honest too. You know, magic happens. It's a wonderful time. And I'm just now putting this last bit of info in there for you. Let's see. And I know we always have our closing words. All right. Oh, before I do all that, I apologize. If you have anyone who is interested in becoming a member of Austin Area MHC, I'm putting in our Peers Connect link. That's for our membership form. There is, just sign up there. One of our warm callers will get in contact with you and you'll automatically be a member. And lastly, I'm putting in my the crisis peer support referral link. That's for clinicians, family partners, family members to share information and to find out more about our crisis program, where I can go in and actually work with individuals one-on-one in those crisis situations. Here's our peer support. There's our Peer Connect link. And then our referral form link is coming up next. It is HIPAA compliant. So all medical information is completely private, as well as, let's get that little email in there, and then life is good. And one of the most awkward things that I will never get used to is this virtual space and seeing people like do this and laugh and smile and just get complete silence. It's just like, I hope that didn't just fall on deaf ears. So thank you for the visuals. And let's put that email.